Oh dear. Poor AA Milne.
Pooh Bear, Winnie the Pooh Bear, looking for fun, chasing some honeybees. Pooh Bear, I know he's out there, rumbly tumbly, climbing a honey tree.
It is 4:44 p.m. on Thursday, August 2nd, 2018. I am recording in the daytime to make lighting easier, but a little later on, I shall be headed for the AMC Burbank 16 in beautiful Burbank, California, to catch a 9 p.m. screening of Christopher Robin. I'm some jerk with a camera, and welcome to One Movie Later, where I compare and contrast my preconceptions and postconceptions of movies in theaters now. So, as will probably become a biannual tradition here at One Movie Later, earlier this summer I ran a Twitter poll where I asked my Twitter followers what other movie I should cover for One Movie Later this summer besides the movies I knew I was covering no matter what. The poll was between Action Point, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, Ant-Man and the Wasp, and Christopher Robin, all of which had varying degrees of connections to theme parks, but none of which felt like must-dos. I was fully expecting either Jurassic World or Ant-Man and the Wasp to win, but instead, the winner was Christopher Robin, a movie I wasn't even really intending to see, much less cover for a vlog, but, I guess I have to do both now, so I'll give it my best shot. So Christopher Robin is, of course, the human.
It's the part I was born to play, baby!
In the Winnie the Pooh franchise, based on A.A. Milne's classic children's books Winnie the Pooh and The House at Pooh Corner, neither of which I have read because I'm a stupid American. Like an enormous majority of the population, I am primarily familiar with these characters via the Disney movies, and Winnie the Pooh has had perhaps the most unusual trajectory of any classic Walt-era Disney franchise. It was originally planned as a full-length animated feature to be released between The Sword and the Stone and The Jungle Book, but then The Sword and the Stone didn't do very well, and around this time Walt was under tremendous pressure from his investors to cut corners in the animation department wherever possible. And I have to presume that Walt reasoned, well, 25 minutes of animation is cheaper to produce than 75, and the Pooh stories are really episodic anyway. So the Pooh feature film was put on hold, and instead the short featurette Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree was released in 1966, and it was the very last new Disney animated film of any kind released to theaters before Walt's death. Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day followed in 1968, and then Winnie the Pooh and Tigger 2 in 1974, and then all three of those shorts were combined into the feature film The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh in 1977. All of which were these cute, sweet, charming, delightful, occasionally witty, if somewhat slight children's stories about a bunch of offbeat character types interacting with each other with no real villains to speak of, or even all that much of a plot, really. Decades before Disney's straight-to-video sequel boom of the 90s, or the live-action remake boom of the 10s, Winnie the Pooh, presumably because he straddled the line between shorts and features, became the one Disney franchise that it was just kinda okay to oversaturate. In 1983, Disney hired an outside studio to produce a fourth short, Winnie the Pooh and a Day for Eeyore. The same year, the Disney Channel launched, and one of their very first shows was a horrifying live-action series called Welcome to Pooh Corner.
There are certain private places on your body that nobody is supposed to touch. That's the kind of touching that gives you a funny feeling inside.
And of course, one of Disney's first animated TV shows was The New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, which ran for 4 seasons on ABC Saturday morning. And of course, once the Eisner era, with its let's over-merchandise everything ethos, really got going, God, there's been too much stuff to even mention at all. Holiday TV specials, direct-to-video features, another live-action series, a CGI series, and even 3 low-budget theatrical features produced by Disney Toon Studios in the early aughts. And of course, rides. Now, the really good Pooh ride is Pooh's Honey Hunt in Tokyo, which was Disney's first ever trackless dark ride, and to this day, it still has some of the longest wait times in the park. There's also Winnie the Pooh rides in both Hong Kong and Shanghai, which is kinda odd considering how much China President Xi Jinping does not care for that character. The only Disney resort without a Pooh ride is Paris, which is also kinda odd considering how close it is to England. But the very first Winnie the Pooh dark ride was The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh at the Magic Kingdom in Florida, which notoriously replaced Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, much to the chagrin of pretty much everyone. And in 2003, another Pooh dark ride opened at Critter Country in Disneyland, where it replaced Country Bear Jamboree, which of course closed 10 months before the Country Bears movie came out. Winnie the Pooh was really throwing his weight around these parks. A toad here, a country bear there, nothing was safe from Pooh's wrath. But there was a reason for that. Winnie the Pooh was among Disney's most reliable money-making evergreens. And for that reason, after The Princess and the Frog underperformed, it was thought that maybe if Walt Disney Feature Animation produced a really good feature-length Winnie the Pooh movie, it might just give 2D animation the nice shot in the arm it needed. So they made one, and it came out in 2011 on the same day as the final Harry Potter movie. And they haven't made a 2D feature since. So now that Disney is making live-action reboots of absolutely everything, it was only a matter of time before they got around to Pooh Bear, but it's odd that they chose a story focusing on Christopher Robin, who was easily the least interesting character in this whole franchise. It's kind of a stretch to even call him a character, really. He's kind of the 100-Acre Wood equivalent of God. He's the one everyone looks up to, he always has all the answers, always gets them out of jams. Not to put too fine a point on it, but the first 6 letters in his name are literally Christ. In the 90s, they even made a direct-to-video movie where Christopher Robin goes missing, and the movie kind of frames it as nothing less than Pooh's spiritual crisis.
I need you to come here and find me, 'cause without you I'm totally lost.
And that all kind of fits because the subtext of all of these stories is that on some level, they all take place inside Christopher Robin's head. The characters are all stuffed animals in a little boy's nursery, and he invents these stories about them, and it suits the kid's ego to basically paint himself as the Mary Sue, only without the burden of being a main character. So why make him the main character? It would be like rebooting Toy Story and centering it around Andy. It would just take all the fun out of it, you know? Well, the way they've done it is to essentially remake Hook. They cast Ewan McGregor as a grown-up, middle-aged Christopher Robin, who has been called back to 100-Acre Wood because reasons, and all these beloved characters from his childhood are CGI now. In short, it's a metaphor for being a grown-ass adult sitting through all these goddamn Disney live-action reboots of our favorite childhood characters and being reminded of how very, 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 very old we've gotten. On an unrelated note, yes, I do turn 35 this month. How'd you guess? Oh yeah, and there's a scene in the trailer where his daughter sees the characters walking around too.
You must be Madeline.
Wait, you're the bearer of my father's drawings.
So there's no more ambiguity about whether they're imaginary. They are real.
Oh my God, I knew it. I knew it! I knew it!
Everything about this premise feels simultaneously a lot less fun, but also, if they don't screw it up, potentially a lot more poignant. Almost Pixarian a little. It ties into the very end of the 1977 feature where Christopher Robin has to go off to school and he knows he won't have as much time for frivolity anymore, and he and Pooh have that heartbreaking conversation.
Promise you won't forget me? Ever?
Oh, I won't, Christopher. I promise.
Not even when I'm 100?
How old shall I be then?
99.
If the movie really sticks the landing on bringing that story of aging and loss to a satisfying conclusion, essentially a cinematic adaptation of that one Kenny Loggins song,
Help me if you can, I've got to get back to the house in Blue Corner by one.
then this could be something really special, like we saw in that first trailer.
Pooh? Christopher Robin.
Or it could cheap out and just resort to wacky comedy hijinks like we saw in the second trailer. My hopes aren't insanely high, though, in part because it's regurgitating the exact same tired-ass workaholic dad doesn't have time for his family trope that I complained about in my Haunted Mansion movie review.
I promised my wife and daughter I'd take them away this weekend.
We're gonna take off for the weekend. We're gonna go down to the lake like we did last year with the kids.
Haley Atwell plays Christopher Robin's wife, which... I don't know if I'm ready to watch Hollywood force Agent Carter into the supportive wife and mom role. Like, I knew it would happen, I was just hoping it would take a few more years. In the voice roles, they cast a few semi-well-known names, like Brad Garrett as Eeyore, Toby Jones as Owl, and Peter Capaldi as Rabbit. But to their credit, from the very first rumblings I heard about this movie, they always cast Jim Cummings as the voice of Pooh. Jim Cummings pretty much is Pooh now. He's been doing the voice for 30 years, even when mean, it's not entirely appropriate.
She must have hidden the plans in the escape pod. Oh, bother.
Casting anyone else would just be heresy. It was borderline heresy when they cast Chris O'Dowd, of all people, as the voice of Tigger in this movie, but then, thankfully, test audiences hated his take on the character, so cooler heads prevailed and Jim Cummings dubbed all of Tigger's dialogue, too. And the director is Mark Forster, whose work has run the gamut from pretty good Oscar bait dramas to god-awful action flicks. It's easy enough to write off a film like Christopher Robin as a soulless cash grab, and it very easily could be, but it could also very easily be a pleasant surprise. The anguish of coming to grips with losing one's carefree youth is nothing if not a bottomless well for drama and pathos. Hell, an old man obsessing over childhood playthings just happens to be the hook of what everyone calls the greatest movie of all time. Will Christopher Robin find similar hidden depths in its premise? Or will this just be another unnecessary reboot metatextually about the experience of watching it, on the way to the next unnecessary reboot metatextually about the experience of watching it? Only time will tell.
Say no. Stop that. It's not okay with me. No, don't do that. I have the right, you see. My body is my very own. That's how it's got to be.
Okay, so introduce yourselves.
Are we starting with me? Oh, hello.
I'm Zach Hurst, aka Captain R.L. King of the SS Artifice. I do a show called The Voyages.
And I invited him here specifically because he can do the Sterling Holloway Pooh voice.
I'm so happy I could be here of service today. I even decided to wear my Pooh shirt. Not a shirt covered in poo, just a shirt that looked like.
Took us 30 seconds to go there.
Hi, I'm Brianna, aka Brianna Cherry Garcia. Casual YouTuber, mostly artist.
I'm Chris NEBERGALL. I do a YouTube show about theme parks called Remain Seated with Chris NEBERGALL, and a podcast called Tales of the Liberty Flyer.
I'm Luke Ski. I have appeared on a television program via voice with Jim Cummings, which makes me 2 degrees away from Kevin Bacon.
Buford, did it happen? Have we finally punched our tickets?
There's only one way to tell.
Oh, yay.
We all just saw Christopher Robin, and it's pretty good overall,
Yeah,
I would say. It fulfilled both my greatest hopes for this movie, meager as they were, and my greatest fears of this movie, again, meager as they were. It did have a lot of pretty poignant stuff to say about aging and the value of, never losing your ability for nonsense. It did kind of resort to those, wacky shenanigan kids movie moments where, oh, we gotta have a car chase in the third act. At times like that, it almost made me think I was watching one of the Smurfs movies or something.
They didn't go like cynical or risque or,
Super
whatever.
It just made me picture like a gritty reboot of Winnie the Pooh, where he just like eats people when he comes out. There's a rumbly in my tumbly.
Makes as much sense as a dark movie about Superman, I guess. It was a very sweet movie. It was not afraid to wear its emotion on its sleeve and all over every other part of its clothing. If you don't like that kind of stuff, avoid this movie like the plague. You almost feel like you're gonna get diabetes watching it at a certain point. You almost want to just pick up Winnie the Pooh and show it to the producers and writers and director and say, show me on the bear where subtlety touched you. One thing they got absolutely right, which I think was crucial to get right in a movie like this, all the 100 Acre Wood characters were those characters.
Yes.
Like, they didn't feel like perversions of those characters. They didn't feel like, they made no attempts to, make them hip or whatever.
Well, in some cases, like, some of the casting was brilliant, like having Brad Garrett play Eeyore.
I actually was nervous about that. I was so hooked on Peter Cullen growing up, obviously.
Right.
And then Bud Lucky. Who sadly could not be here to do this movie.
I mean, Peter Cullen's still doing Optimus Prime, so I don't know why he couldn't have still done Eeyore.
Well, I mean, Brad Garrett's already done a bunch of stuff for
true.
Disney, so it was probably just easier.
They just called him from another movie into this room for a second.
Yeah.
I was initially missing some of the classic voices that I knew, because obviously Jim Cummings is Pooh and Tigger and sounds just like you've always remembered, and
of course.
There were others like Rabbit and Piglet that were, that's different from when I was a kid. I don't like things that were different. But the new voice cast actually really grew on me really fast, because they were not impersonating any of the old voices, but they were playing the characters correctly. That's a good different voice for Piglet. That's a good different voice for Owl.
Jim Cummings was excellent.
He was fantastic.
Yeah.
That was my initial reaction when I first saw the trailer, because in that scene, Christopher Robin's like, what to do,
right?
And then you hear Pooh behind him, what to do indeed, and I'm just like, oh, thank goodness they got him. It's actually his voice. Thank you.
So heartbeat, my emotions.
My emotion. I'm glad he was able to voice both Pooh and Tigger.
There were other characters that were recast well, but I feel like it would not have been right if it wasn't Jim Cummings doing those particularly iconic two voices.
Absolutely. I said this in the intro, but initially Chris O'Dowd was cast as the voice of Tigger for some reason. I guess they felt like they needed more stars in the movie, and because Chris O'Dowd is a star, but I like Chris O'Dowd, nothing against him, but then
he's a little star.
He had like 2 minutes of screen time in Thor: The Dark World.
Yeah, he's in a lot of movies.
Yeah,
like just there.
He was one of the snails in Epic, but anyway, but the. This is what's in my head instead of knowledge.
You're a reviewer of very little brain.
Indeed I am. There was not a single bit of bad acting in the movie, I thought.
Absolutely not.
There was a little bit of overacting from some of the more arch characters.
When they have young Christopher Robin, I feel like he was hired because he sounds spot on like Christopher Robin, but he did not have he didn't have very strong like facial acting. So that's the only weak thing, but that's gone after 5-10 minutes.
With Rabbit, we went from the Ice King to the 12th Doctor.
That was actually the one that was worrying me when I looked at the cast list. I was really worried to see Peter Capaldi as Rabbit. I'm like, that's either going to be absolutely brilliant or it's going to be the most off-putting thing in the movie. And then I forgot that Peter Capaldi can do other things with his voice than Peter Capaldi. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, never mind, this is fantastic, because he just gets to play a stuffed shirt, which is exactly what he did in In the Loop in that whole series. He just took out the foul words.
I didn't really like Rabbit's design. That's kind of the biggest nitpicks I have about
Rabbit and Owl.
Yeah, Rabbit and Owl just looked
Owl just looked like an owl.
I think both of them did. They both looked like their animals, not like
choice. Everyone else is a stuffed animal, and they're just real animals.
Rabbit looked a little too much like the March Hare from the Tim Burton Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or like Peter Rabbit.
I'm also just used to Rabbit being yellow, and I know that's a minor nitpick, but...
Sure. Well, a lot of the colors were more muted in this movie, which was kind of disappointing, but also, I get it, because they wanted to make them look like 1910 stuffed animals.
They could have done better at this, but they did a good enough job at actually making the wife and daughter real flesh and blood characters and not just plot devices.
Yeah.
I say good enough because it felt like, okay, they give them one token scene between the second and third acts of where they communicate with each other and they get some of that stuff across. I just would have liked to see more of that.
It did feel pretty cookie cutter.
So apparently, after Captain America got frozen, Agent Carter settled for Christopher Robin.
I would. I mean,
why not?
It's Ewan McGregor.
Yeah, it's Ewan McGregor. Why not?
At first, I was like, I kind of missed the narration by John Cleese. And but then as it got more darker and more serious, I'm like, oh, maybe that wasn't so.
Well, it was Sebastian Cabot in the originals, and then it was John Cleese in the 2011 film.
That's what I'm remembering.
100 Acre Wood and all of those characters really only exist because Christopher Robin,
believes in them,
could remember them and believe in them in the photo.
I do believe in fairies.
They added a lot more mythos to the Winnie the Pooh-verse. So they're not just stuffed toys in his nursery anymore. This is actually a real alternate world that he can only get to by going through a magic tree. And I guess you need that in order for the film to make sense, but it's disappointing that they felt like it had to make sense when the whole point of the movie is that not everything should make sense.
Yeah, I would greatly prefer actually if the opening sequence was just excised and you don't know that Winnie the Pooh is a physical actual entity until he comes through and meets older Christopher Robin.
Right.
And then it's kind of a magic realism thing of have they come to life? Am I just imagining this? Were they always real? But the movie starts with, nope, he literally actually went there, and then he grew up and forgot about it. I mean, we've been comparing this movie to Hook. There's no, discovery process of, oh, it really was real. He's just oh, Pooh, you're back. I kind of wasn't expecting that.
You can kind of tell that it was kind of, not necessarily beaten out of him, but it was kind of ingrained in his head that was just an imaginary thing. They do have that moment where he's like, I'm going crazy, you weren't real.
Yeah, but the moment doesn't last long enough.
The
He
second
accepts
that-
it a little too quickly for the kind of character he is in the first act.
I appreciate them not playing that game for a while, just because I've seen that game a lot. We're just going to tell the story as we want to tell it, and we're not going to, like, beat around that bush of, like, are they real? Well, you'll never know. Like, I just, like, it's a kid's movie. Let it be a kid's movie. I get where you guys are coming from, but I'm also but there's also a part of it just like, just let it. Just let it.
But to me, it just didn't fit thematically with the film's overarching arc of, you know, the stuffed shirt guy who's got to learn how to discover his childhood again. It didn't feel like the metatext matched.
I don't know how you would find a way to, like, merge those two ideas without the movie being, like, 20 minutes longer.
Yeah.
Just to, like, showcase him playing with them, and then they have to go to the 100-acre wood, and they become alive, and then it leaves them there.
I guess everyone else's childhood is fake. Christopher Robin's childhood is the only real childhood.
Yeah, that's the one thing I was like, is no one going to address the fact that his imagination apparently has supernatural powers?
Yeah,
Is he going to join the Shyamalan Split movie? Was this, like, the things he makes up become real?
Disney owns Marvel, so who knows? He's going to be the one to save everyone from Thanos retroactively.
Maybe he was always a boring, stodgy kid, and he wouldn't have had an imagination if it did turn out to be real.
The framing in the movie was really good. Like, it was really easy to understand in a lot of ways, and a lot of the cinematography kind of just told the story on its own. This movie is firing on every cylinder with cinematography and editing, and the music is fantastic, and the CGI is there, and the acting is there, and the directing is there. The only cylinder it's not firing on is the script, which has all the subtlety of a poo to the face.
Which is odd, because I noticed one of the screenwriters was Tom McCarthy, who co-wrote Up, and I believe wrote and directed Spotlight. Really talented screenwriter and director. I guess the good stuff came from him.
There was nothing inherently wrong with the script.
Of course, he also did The Cobbler with Adam Sandler, so who knows.
He walked in the writer's room, we need a balloon. Maybe several balloons, trust me. Go.
The balloon.
Give me 13 episodes.
The balloon was a nice bit of symbolism, kind of a reference to the French film The Red Balloon, but also a reference to Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree, where he uses the balloons to get up to the tree.
I want a balloon.
The movie was structurally very predictable, but in a way that was fine. Like,
yeah,
I knew where it was going, and I didn't have the mental energy to be mad about it.
Imagine going to movies to not feel mad about things.
I mean, the Winnie the Pooh stories, you know, have always been simplistic, you know?
Yeah, right.
I never expect anything overly complicated with them.
It's not a movie that is meant to make you, like, think for an hour, but not every movie needs to be, and I don't really want every movie to be anymore. I just realized, I don't think Pooh once said, hey, go think.
No, I don't think he did.
Which is weird, because that's, like, his line in my head.
Yeah.
What he never said, correct me if I'm wrong, is "oh bother." I don't recall.
No, yeah, he did.
He did?
Yeah, I think he did once or twice.
He said "oh dear." I don't remember "oh bother."
No, he said
I heard it.
I forget the context, but he definitely said "oh bother."
Okay, I believe you.
We'll have to watch it again and ask, oh bother, where art thou? My younger brother kind of went through a Winnie the Pooh phase. That was like, you know, early 80s. Pooh kind of had that big resurgence. I'm assuming it's because of the TV series initially.
There were several TV series, but the big one was the animated one in 88.
And then
Winnie the Pooh Bear.
That led to Disney Toon Studios making a whole bunch of Winnie the Pooh spin-off movies that ended up going to theaters instead of to DVD.
The three of them, the Tigger movie, Piglet's Big Movie, and Pooh's Heffalump movie all went to theaters.
Yeah, it seemed like Disney was trying to rise up the Winnie the Pooh cast to be just as important as like Mickey and Minnie and Donald and Goofy and stuff, and that just really started to grate on me. Then the 2011 Pooh movie came out, directed by Steve Anderson, and I'm like, well, this is wonderful and lovely. And they actually had a sign taped to the outside movie poster that said, like, this is a 2D feature. So I was like, what?
By that point, there was a CGI Winnie the Pooh series on Playhouse Disney called My Friends Tigger and Pooh, where Christopher Robin wasn't even in it. They replaced him with the little girl voiced by Hit Girl.
Generations or half generations go by. It's like everyone's getting introduced to Winnie the Pooh by Disney in various ways, and I think this way could be like a touchstone film that means a lot to some young kids out there, you know, their target audience.
I feel like this is pitched way more to adults who grew up with Winnie the Pooh.
It's for people who grew up with Winnie the Pooh and no one else.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I feel like if you don't have an emotional resonance with Winnie the Pooh, you are going to just be kind of bored.
Or adults that grew up with Winnie the Pooh that now have kids who want to introduce them
Well, sure,
to
but
characters.
Well, what I mean is the people who are going to resonate with it most are people who are going to, like, see the imagery of Winnie the Pooh and an adult Christopher Robin, or just seeing these characters in this setting. If you're outside the Winnie the Pooh circle, it's not really...
Winnie the Pooh's pointless circle of nothing?
Yeah.
I feel like the marketing initially was more aimed at adults. You know, you had that trailer that barely showed Winnie the Pooh at all. It was all about Christopher Robin reconnecting with his past. But at the 11th hour, they were like, the billboard is them at the beach on lawn chairs. Get the Smurfs audience.
I'll be the first to admit that a lot of the stuff we're complaining about are nitpicks.
Yeah.
You know, ultimately, if you just want a nice, sweet little family, you know, drama with these characters, you know, it's fine. You know,
it's a feel-good movie.
It does not insult your intelligence, and it's a feel-good movie.
If you want to escape the existential nightmare, which is our reality in 2018, go watch Winnie the Pooh.
Go watch the Christopher Robin movie.
Hey kids, do you need a thing to stop the screaming inside? Well, if I got the movie for you.
Oh boy! If you still need yet another palate cleanser to watching everyone dissolve in Infinity War, this might help stave off the pain for another couple hours.
I don't feel so good.
It's delightful and it's charming.
Yeah.
We nitpick it because that's our job, but it's good.
By complete happenstance, and Zach, Luke, I don't think you guys were there to see this. On our way into the theater, we ran into, I think his name is pronounced Chris Burgoch. He was the co-writer and producer of the Florida Project.
Oh, neat.
And he recognized me from the one movie later we did on the Florida Project, because we were one of the few people to actually do a vlog on that movie, because it's an indie movie. And he loved our review. He said, you know, you nailed it. You noticed so much stuff that no one else noticed, not even like the major critics, which was nice to hear. And we told him, yeah, we're seeing Christopher Robin, and they say we cried all the way through it. It's so good. Enjoy it so much. So, you know, if guys like that who produced one of the greatest movies about childhood I've seen in years, if they think it represents, you know, childhood whimsy correctly, who are we to judge? So let's go into spoilers, guys, shall we?
All right.
Hooray, let us do a smackerel of spoilers.
No, stop that. It's really not okay. No, don't do that. Take your hands away. I know I'm not at all to blame. I've done nothing bad. And now I'm going right away to tell my mom and dad.
They kind of dovetail it with the end of The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh from 1977, where they have almost the exact same conversation of, you know, what do you like to do best? I like just doing nothing. Remember me always, even when I'm 100? How old will I be? 99. You know, that's straight from the end of the 1977 Winnie the Pooh feature.
They have this one shot where it's just like, Christopher Robin gets some bad news, and he just walks up to his mom, and you instantly know, oh, the dad is dead because he's not there.
Yeah.
That opening sequence, not the opening sequence where he's a kid, but the sort of, you know, the first 10 minutes of Up type sequence where it's a montage.
It's the opening credits.
Yeah, the opening credits where you see him age like 35 years and you see him fight in the war. Christopher Robin's a war veteran now.
That was a little dark.
Oh, all those memories of my stuffed animal imagination land are going to be either repressed or just wiped out because I need to survive this war.
Christopher Robin comes downstairs and he sees his daughter has left him the old drawing he used to draw of Pooh, and he leaves it on the table and then knocks over the pot of honey, and the honey spills all over it and then breaks. It's like laying it on thick, ain't you, movie?
Well, yeah, honey can only be laid on thick.
Of course.
But what I really appreciated right after that was Pooh wakes up and seems to be the only one existing in the 100-acre wood. And it very much feels like it's because Christopher Robin is only just now remembering Winnie the Pooh.
It was almost like that was the magical transition of the honey.
Well, that was
to cue the characters.
That's how you summon Pooh. You spill honey and then he's like a demon.
You spill honey and then say Winnie the Pooh 3 times in the mirror and then he shows up.
And he destroys your kitchen.
They never touched on that again, did they?
No, they didn't.
When he shoved Pooh in his coat, the neighbor saw him. So it was like, clearly there is something
Yeah,
there.
so the mailman from Game Night is in this movie.
I will admit I have eagerly awaited a visit such as this.
But he's British and he wants to play gin rummy now. That went nowhere. That was literally just a plot device to get him into the park, which who's to say he wouldn't have just wanted to go to the park?
That's also just a way for them to suggest really fast, no, they're real. Everybody can see them.
Yeah.
You know, that was them making a hard line decision of getting it out of your head that it could possibly be imaginary.
And I don't think that was the right decision.
No.
I really don't.
When Christopher Robin's a child and playing with all his friends in the 100-acre wood, everything's nice and pristine and clean, essentially. And then, you know, cut to the modern day when he's an adult and he's just gotten back into the wood. You know, it's like it's him and Pooh walking through the wood, but it's muddy, and like you see Pooh like stepping through the leaves, and he's all dirty, and it's like, oh no.
And after he spends the day with Pooh, he remembers everybody else.
It also gets sunnier in the 100-acre wood, and the fog goes away. The more like the fog of memory.
There's this running thread that the movie does kind of beat into you, but it is a pretty good message of the value of nothing, basically.
Sometimes nothing can lead to the very best something.
Exactly.
Unless you're in the never-ending story, in which case run.
Right. Fortunately, there was no horse drowning in quicksand in this movie that I could see. A donkey that almost drowns at one point, but...
Eeyore had some of my favorite lines from this.
Eeyore had the best lines in this movie.
Did.
It was nice of you to kidnap me. The great thing about Eeyore is because he's allowed to be cynical, you get all your cynicalness out in one character where it fits.
While Eeyore was cynical, he was also the one who, like, first realized that Christopher Robin was Christopher... Well, besides Winnie the Pooh. The one thing that makes Christopher, like, real to Eeyore is the fact that he's happy.
The movie's got kind of a dubious premise just all around, but the one scene where I think it really worked was the one where he pretends to fight off the heffalump. It doesn't matter that there's not really a heffalump there, they just want some sort of acknowledgement that he believes them about it.
The thing he was beating, the heffalump, was his briefcase.
Right, of course. Show me on the bear where subtlety touched you, movie. Like, what was the deal with that dream sequence where he's in the pit and then he dreams that he's drowning and Pooh is drowning too, and then the swimming heffalump?
It's leading into Dumbo, which will lead into eventually live action movies.
That was the most aggressively like magic realism part of the movie, which was the only part that doesn't kind of adhere to this grounding rules.
They showed Christopher Robin slipping and like having a rock or something hit his head,
Right.
so it's like he's knocked out while it's raining into the big hole.
Also, it ties into what the boss told him earlier about sinking or swimming, I guess. It's almost like a dream sequence within a dream sequence, so now we're in Inception, apparently.
Yeah, well,
Do you get it? He's the heffalump. Do you get it?
The scene where the cab driver and the cop and the other guy are like arguing with each other. Did you see those animals talk? And I swear I saw those animals talk. And it went on for like 5 days. Were those cameos?
One of them was Mackenzie Crook.
Yeah.
The Pirates of the Caribbean movie.
Right. There was some really good moments in there, like when you see the guy and his face is just like, oh fuck, I saw it.
Do you think that the woman walking by with the Dalmatian was meant to be
Anita.
a reference?
It was Anita.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
From 101 Dalmatians. Let's just go with that.
More cinematic universes. His upper class twit of the year boss who just kept running into
you mean the guy
things
with the ridiculously fake looking hair and the bad complexion? I wonder.
Who kept knocking stuff over because wacky.
But also, like, instead of doing work, was playing golf. I wonder, who's that a reference to? Orange hair, bad complexion, and playing golf. When I realized what he was, I was like, oh my god, I can't unsee it. The sad thing is, The Onion made fun of that before the movie came out. The Onion's review of it is just like, it's a searing indictment of the Trump administration because this is the only way I can talk about it anymore. Otherwise, I get sad.
In this day and age, it's impossible for me to talk about it through literally any other lens. God, I'm exhausted.
I do appreciate that the solution was not he has to quit his job or something. Because
Yeah.
that happens a lot.
That's where I thought they were going with that. I thought his solution of how they were going to cut 20% was, well, I'll just leave.
I was getting ready to get mad when he was like, "You're right, Madeline, I shouldn't have cared so much about work. From now on, I'm just going to care about you." And I was like, there are like at least 30 people whose jobs are riding on you caring about your work right now.
Well, there's a moment where I get that he did not care about anybody's job, including his own, just because his daughter was missing somewhere in the biggest city in the UK.
And then he's like, oh wait, my God, I do have a solution. I can save them. And I'm just kind of thinking, were you not going to for a second?
Trying to eat his honey and have it too.
Yeah.
And the way he actually does solve the problem really doesn't make sense when you think. I mean, maybe that's the point, that it doesn't have to make sense.
It makes perfect sense, but there's no way any company in the world would ever fucking do it.
Right. It's basically the Bernie Sanders method of solving problems, which is just give money to the poor people and then they'll spend more money and we'll make more money off that. Which is a sound economic policy if everyone does it. But if just one company does it, that company's probably not going to be around much longer. So, that's kind of just a reality.
I feel like their business strategy relies on more than just their own employees buying their luggage, but...
I mean, if they're paying for everyone's vacation, they're not going to recoup that money off them just buying suitcases.
No.
Because a vacation costs more than a suitcase.
That doesn't stand up to an ounce of scrutiny.
No, but the old guy who runs the company, whose son was giving him a hard time, is still like, I like the cut of this man's jib.
I saw the European Union coming and all of the vacation days. It was like, we just got to get ahead of the train, guys.
That scene actually felt like a lot like Mr. Banks from, in the original.
Yeah, that was a very Mary Poppins ending. Father died laughing. That post-credit scene where they're at the beach with the Richard M. Sherman cameo.
That was wonderful.
How sweet was that? That was great.
Wonderful.
Exactly. It is time for What's the Attraction? Chris, what's the attraction?
You just ride the existing Winnie the Pooh ride, but you have to finish all of your efficiency paperwork before it's over or they kick you out of the park. You have to figure out how to pay Disney employees $15 an hour without increasing expenses.
Luke, what's the attraction?
For obvious reasons, they gotta now do another refacing of Mission Breakout and make it Tigger's Up and Down Fun Time with absolutely no inappropriateness. Ever. In 70 years.
Tigger's Up and Down Fun Time. Is that what they're calling it?
Yes, it is. It's completely wholesome. Shut your honey hole.
BRIANNA! BRIANNA! BRIANNA? BRIANNA! I'm just gonna keep doing it until you have an answer.
Oh God, okay.
I don't even know why we're laughing anymore. Okay.
This is a little thing I like to do called not helping.
Over at the Winnie the Pooh sweet shop, you step inside and they just smear honey on your face.
Don't they do that already, pretty much? Just metaphorically?
Metaphorically.
I mean, you get diabetes just walking into that place. Anyway, Zach!
Now when you ride the Disneyland Railroad, you have to participate in the game where you just name everything you see.
Well, as usual, you're all wrong. What they are going to do is they are going to move the entire Winnie the Pooh franchise to Six Flags so that Christopher Robin can finally team up with Christopher Batman.
And fight Christopher Poison Ivy?
Yes, and Christopher Freeze. We usually end one movie later with a song, and for this particular movie about a man's return to Pooh Corner, I can think of no better song than that eternal Kenny Loggins classic, Highway to the Danger Zone. Gonna take you riding through the danger zone.
Goodbye, everyone.
These are not the toys you're looking for.
Winnie the Pooh doesn't know what he's doing, the elder god's got in his head. Task after task he performs without asking why friend after friend turns up dead. And the ultimate goal isn't clearly defined, but it's taking a toll on his silly old mind.
It's bouncy, trouncy, bouncy, trouncy, fun, 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 fun. And the most wonderful thing about here is time, the only one. Boy. There.
Pooh Bear, I gotta be there. It's me and it's you, my silly old Winnie the Pooh.
And don't forget, You have the right to say no.